The Grand Martial Arts Championship in Seoul had never seen a crowd like this. 20,000 fans packed into the stadium, their voices echoing off the ceiling like thunder. Flags from a dozen countries waved in the stands. Camera crews from major networks had set up on every corner. Street food vendors outside had sold out by noon. This was the biggest martial arts event of the year, and everyone knew something special was about to happen. Among the competitors warming up backstage was Marcus Kim, a 24-year-old Taekwondo champion who had taken the martial arts world by storm. He had won 3 consecutive world titles, appeared on magazine covers, and had over 5 million followers on social media. His nickname was the Soul Storm, and if you asked him why, he would be happy to tell you himself. Loudly. For a long time. Marcus was talented, there was no question about that. His kicks were like lightning bolts. His footwork was so fast, it looked like a video on double speed. He trained 6 hours a day, 7 days a week. But somewhere along the way, all those trophies had gone to his head. His coaches whispered about it quietly. His teammates had learned to stay quiet around him. Even his own mother had pulled him aside once and said, "Marcus, your feet are fast, but your mouth is faster." He didn't listen. That afternoon, backstage in the preparation area, Marcus was holding court in front of a group of young fighters who had gathered to watch him stretch. He was doing high kicks and flipping his black belt in his hand like it was a toy. All eyes were on him, and he loved every second of it. One of the younger fighters, a nervous 13-year-old named Jinho, tugged on his sleeve. "Marcus, did you hear who else is performing at the event today?" Marcus barely looked up. Who could possibly matter more than me? Jinho's eyes went wide. Steven Seagal. He's here. Backstage, right now. A few of the other fighters exchanged glances. Some went quiet immediately. One older coach, standing nearby, slowly put down his coffee cup and turned to look at Marcus, waiting to see what he would say. Marcus laughed. It wasn't a small laugh either. It was the kind of laugh that fills an entire room. Steven Seagal? The movie guy? The one with the ponytail? He waved his hand dismissively. Come on. I've seen his movies. He runs around looking tough and throws people into walls. That's Hollywood. That's not real martial arts. The older coach cleared his throat. Marcus, you should know that Steven Seagal is a legend in films. I know. Marcus said, cutting him off and spinning into a perfect tornado kick that whooshed through the air. I'm a legend in real life. Big difference. Nobody laughed. The room had gone a little cold. Meanwhile, in a quiet corner of the backstage area, a man sat alone on a simple wooden bench. He wore a plain black gi with no decorations, no flashy patches, no glittering medals pinned to his chest. His hair was pulled back, his expression completely calm. Around him, assistants moved quickly, technicians tested microphones, event staff rushed back and forth. But this man sat perfectly still in the middle of all that chaos, like a rock in a river. He was Steven Seagal. At 71 years old, he didn't look like what most people expected. He wasn't pumped up and flexing. He wasn't surrounded by bodyguards or signing autographs. He was just sitting, breathing slowly, eyes half closed. A young event assistant approached him nervously with a schedule clipboard. Seagal glanced at it, nodded once, and said quietly, "Thank you." That was it. No demands, no complaints. Nearby, a group of martial arts masters who had recognized him were watching from a distance with deep respect. One of them, a 60-year-old judo grandmaster named Cho, leaned toward his colleague and said softly, "That man has studied Aikido under the masters in Japan for years. He holds a 7th-degree black belt. He is a 6-time world karate champion. And yet look at him. He sits like a student." His colleague nodded slowly. The ones who know the most always need to prove the least. Back on the other side of the arena, Marcus Kim was being interviewed by a YouTube channel with cameras following his every move. The interviewer asked him, "Marcus, any thoughts on sharing the stage with Steven Seagal today?" Marcus shrugged confidently into the camera. "Listen, I respect what he did in movies. Great entertainment. But I've been hitting the mat since I was 6 years old. Real competition. Real pressure. Real wins." He pointed at the camera. "If he wants to step onto a real mat with a real champion, I'm right here." The clip was uploaded within minutes. It spread fast. Very fast. Someone showed it to Seagal's assistant backstage. The assistant hesitated, then decided not to show the old master. But word travels fast in a small arena. Within an hour, almost everyone backstage had seen the clip. A few people shook their heads. Others waited silently to see what would happen next. The event began with dazzling performances. Wushu athletes flew through the air like birds. A group of young Taekwondo students performed a breaking demonstration that brought the crowd to its feet. The energy inside the stadium was electric. Then Marcus Kim was introduced. The crowd roared. His entrance music thumped through the speakers as he jogged onto the stage, waving to every section of the crowd, pointing at fans, soaking it all in. He performed his demonstration with undeniable skill. His kicks were sharp, fast, and powerful. Every combination landed with a crack that echoed through the stadium. The crowd loved it. When he finished, he bowed, but it was the kind of bow that said, "I know you're amazed," rather than the kind that said, "Thank you." He walked to the edge of the stage and grabbed a microphone from the host. "Thank you, Soul. And hey," he grinned, turning toward the wings where he knew the other performers were waiting. "If anyone here wants a challenge, you know where to find me." Laughter from the crowd. Cheers from his section of fans. His team backstage pumped their fists. Then the host walked back to center stage and raised his hand for quiet. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are honored to welcome to this stage a man whose name is known in every martial arts dojo on earth. A practitioner of Aikido, Kendo, and Karate. A 7-time black belt. A 6-time world karate champion. Please welcome Master Steven Seagal." The music was soft. No pumping bass, no dramatic drops. Just a steady, calm instrumental that somehow filled the whole arena. And then Seagal walked out. He didn't rush. He didn't wave. He didn't point at the crowd or flex or smile at the cameras. He simply walked, hands folded calmly behind his back, each step deliberate and measured. He bowed once to the audience, deeply and sincerely. Then he stood still at the center of the stage. The crowd was louder than it had been for anyone else all day. Marcus stood on the side of the stage watching. Something shifted slightly in his expression. Not fear, not yet, but something. A recognition that this man carried a kind of weight that couldn't be faked. He shook it off quickly and smiled to his teammates. "Nice entrance," he muttered. Seagal performed no flashy combinations. He moved slowly through a series of movements that looked almost simple to untrained eyes. Small redirections, subtle shifts in weight. His arms moved like water, smooth, connected, completely without tension. But the masters watching from the crowd leaned forward in their seats. They could see what casual viewers couldn't. Every movement was layered with decades of knowledge. Each position flowed into the next like a sentence in a language most people never learned to speak. When he finished, the arena gave him a standing ovation. Seagal bowed again, quietly, and stepped to the side. The host, still glowing from the moment, turned to the crowd. "Would anyone like to join Master Seagal on stage for a friendly demonstration?" Marcus Kim had already grabbed a second microphone and stepped forward before the host even finished the sentence. "I'll go," he said, grinning at the crowd. The crowd buzzed instantly. Phones went up everywhere. People nudged each other. This was not on the schedule. The host looked uncertain for just a moment, then smiled and stepped aside. Marcus walked onto the center of the stage and stopped a few feet from Seagal. The height difference was noticeable. Marcus was lean and quick, built like a sports car. Seagal was broader, older, calm in a way that didn't look like stillness but felt like it. Marcus bowed, but not very deeply. "It's an honor, Master Seagal. I just wanted to say, I grew up watching your movies." He smiled at the cameras. "But I always wondered how those moves would hold up against real Taekwondo." A ripple of gasps moved through the crowd. Several coaches watching from the wings closed their eyes and shook their heads. Seagal looked at Marcus for a long moment. Not with anger, not with amusement, just with the steady, patient attention of a man who had seen this exact moment before, many times, in many places, on many faces. When he finally spoke, his voice was calm and quiet, and somehow everyone in the arena heard every word clearly. "Young man, a wise fighter never announces his power. He lets his technique speak." Marcus tilted his head and smiled at the crowd. Then let's let the techniques do the talking. The crowd went wild. The host, swept up in the moment, called for a referee. A senior black belt from the hosting organization walked out quickly and took position. Seagal nodded once. He didn't change his posture. He didn't go into a dramatic fighting stance. He simply stood, relaxed, feet shoulder-width apart, hands loose at his sides. Marcus bounced on his toes, sharp eyes scanning Seagal from head to foot, looking for weaknesses the way he had been trained to do since he was a child. The referee raised his hand. This is a demonstration of technique, not a competition. Mutual respect at all times. He looked at both men. They nodded. His hand dropped. Begin. Marcus moved instantly. His body was a loaded spring, and he released it with full force, launching into a high-spinning back kick aimed at Seagal's shoulder. It was blinding fast. The crowd sucked in a breath. Seagal took one small step to his right. The kick missed by 2 inches. Marcus landed clean, reset immediately, and launched again. A double kick combination, low then high. Seagal's hands moved in a tiny circular motion and both kicks were redirected slightly, enough to throw Marcus's rhythm off. He stumbled for just a half step. Nobody in the crowd would have caught it, but Marcus felt it. He stepped back, surprised. He had expected resistance. He had expected to feel power pushing back against him. Instead, it was like kicking at fog. There was nothing to push against. His power just disappeared somewhere. He came in again, this time with a fierce combination. Roundhouse, axe kick, spinning hook. The combinations that had won him 3 world titles. The moves that had made 20,000 people cheer 30 minutes ago. Seagal was barely moving. Small tilts of the shoulder. Half steps backward. A gentle upward movement of one wrist. Each motion used almost no energy at all, and yet Marcus kept finding himself off balance. His strikes landing in empty air, his weight shifted wrong. The crowd was getting confused. Someone shouted, "Is he even trying?" A martial arts master sitting in the 3rd row leaned to his neighbor and said quietly, "He's doing everything. Watch his feet. Watch his hips. The boy can't see it yet." After 2 full minutes of attacking, Marcus stepped back, breathing harder than he should have been. He shook his arms out, reset his stance, and looked at Seagal with something new in his eyes. Not quite worry, not quite respect, but something had been unlocked. "You're just moving away," Marcus said, a little breathless. "You haven't done anything." Seagal looked at him calmly. "I have done quite a lot," he said. "You simply haven't noticed yet." Marcus lunged forward with pure speed, not a planned combination this time, just raw explosive speed, going for a wrist grab of his own to set up a throw. It was a good instinct. Smart, aggressive, fast. But Seagal was no longer where he had been. Marcus's hand closed on nothing. His momentum carried him forward, and in the same heartbeat Seagal had placed one hand on his shoulder and one on his wrist, not gripping hard, barely touching, but redirecting. Marcus felt his entire body turn like a wheel, and suddenly the floor was rising toward him. He landed on the mat flat on his back. It was so fast, so smooth, so completely without drama that half the crowd wasn't sure what they had just seen. Then the phones started going up, people rewinding their own recordings, watching it again, then again. Marcus lay on the mat for a moment. Not because he was hurt. He wasn't hurt at all. Seagal had been incredibly careful about that. He lay there because something had just happened to him that had never happened before, and his brain needed an extra second to process it. He stood up. Seagal hadn't moved from where he stood. Marcus stared at him. A strange expression was on his face. For the first time in as long as anyone could remember watching him compete, Marcus Kim was completely quiet. Seagal said gently, "The most dangerous thing in a fight is not your opponent's fist. It is your own certainty." Marcus opened his mouth, closed it again. He thought about every trophy in his apartment, every magazine cover, every viral clip of his flying kicks. He thought about the comment he had made backstage about Hollywood movies. He thought about the way he had bowed, barely, when he had walked onto this stage. He thought about his mother telling him his mouth was faster than his feet. He looked at this old man standing 10 feet away from him, who had not thrown a single punch, had not raised his voice once, had not even broken a sweat, and who had just put him on the floor in front of 20,000 people and 100 cameras like it was the simplest, most natural thing in the world. Marcus took a very long breath. Then he walked forward, and this time his bow was deep. His back was parallel to the floor, his head lowered, and he held it for 3 full seconds. The kind of bow you give when you mean it. "Sensei," he said quietly, "I owe you an apology. And not just for today." The arena went completely silent. 20,000 people holding their breath at the same time. Seagal looked at the young man in front of him. His expression didn't change to triumph or satisfaction. It changed to something much softer than that. It changed to kindness. "There is nothing to apologize for," he said. "Pride is the first thing a young champion earns, and the last thing a true master needs. You simply have not finished your journey yet." Marcus straightened up. His eyes were bright. Whether it was the bright lights of the stage or something else entirely, nobody could be sure. "How do you do that?" he asked. "How do you stay that calm when someone is coming at you with everything they have?" Seagal was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Because I am not fighting you. I am listening to you. Your body tells me everything before your foot ever leaves the ground. When you stop thinking about how you look and start thinking about what is true, the answer always comes before the question." The host, who had been standing frozen at the side of the stage for the past several minutes, pressed his earpiece and slowly walked back to center. His voice came out a little unsteady. "Ladies and gentlemen, I have been hosting martial arts events for 20 years. I have never seen anything like that." The crowd finally released everything it had been holding, and the applause was enormous. Not the pumping, excited kind from earlier. This was deep, warm, the kind that rises up from somewhere honest inside a person. Seagal turned to the crowd and bowed low, then turned back to Marcus. "You have great speed," he said. "Speed is a gift. But speed without stillness is just noise. Train your spirit as hard as you train your legs. The rest will follow." Marcus nodded slowly. He reached up and touched his black belt. Then he looked at Seagal. "Will you show me?" "Not now, not here. But sometime." Seagal looked at him for a moment, and a small smile appeared. "You already began," he said. "Just now, when you bowed and meant it." The crowd applauded again. Somewhere in the stands, a group of young Taekwondo students from a local school were watching with giant eyes. One of them, a small girl about 8 years old, turned to her instructor and said, "Which one won?" Her instructor thought about it for a second. Then he said, "Both of them, but for different reasons." That night the clips spread everywhere. The moment Seagal redirected Marcus and sent him to the floor in what looked like barely a movement was already past 3 million views before midnight. But the clip that spread the fastest, the one that got shared by parents and teachers and coaches all over the world, was not that one. It was the clip of Marcus bowing. Deep, sincere, held for 3 full seconds. The comments on that clip didn't say wow or incredible or legendary. They said something simpler. They said respect. Marcus Lee went home that night to his apartment full of trophies and sat quietly in the dark for a long time. He wasn't sad. He wasn't embarrassed. He was thinking. He was thinking about how many years he had trained his body and how little time he had spent training the thing that makes a champion different from just a very fast kicker. He picked up his phone and typed a message to his followers. It was short. "Today I met someone who taught me more in 3 minutes than I learned in 3 years of competing. Real strength doesn't need to be loud. Thank you, Master Seagal. I have a lot of work to do." He put his phone down. Outside, the city hummed and glowed. Somewhere across Seoul, Master Steven Seagal was probably already asleep, at peace, unbothered by trending topics and view counts and viral moments. Just a man who had spent a lifetime filling himself with discipline so quietly and completely that when a young champion full of noise came rushing at him, there was simply no crack for the noise to get through. 2 weeks later, Marcus showed up unannounced at a small dojo in Tokyo where Seagal was teaching a private session. He stood at the entrance and waited. When Seagal saw him, he simply said, "Take off your shoes and come in." Marcus trained there for 3 hours. He didn't post about it. No cameras, no story, no reel. Just a young man on a mat, listening for the first time. When it was over and he was lacing up his shoes to leave, Seagal called after him. "Marcus." Marcus turned. "The trophies are yours," Seagal said. But the moment you stopped needing them to feel like a champion, that was when you actually became one. Marcus bowed one more time, deep, quiet, and sincere, and walked out into the evening air feeling lighter than any flying kick had ever made him feel. If this story moved something in you, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Because the greatest opponent any of us will ever face isn't standing across a mat. It's standing in the mirror. And the day you bow to that, truly bow, is the day the real training begins.